Hi, this is Tim Wade. In this time of disruption, viruses, and other things, how can we as business owners still continue to have team building sessions, times where people can get together, learn, grow, get inspired, think differently, shift their thinking, get some insights, when we really can't all come together in large groups, or at least that's the advice at the moment. So today I've got with me David Simpson from Teambuilding Asia, and he's got some amazing ideas on how we can continue to have team building. Welcome, David.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So what can businesses do? I mean, are you noticing that businesses are having to shift the way that they do team building at the moment in this environment?
Yeah, certainly. We're very challenged here because a lot of people have been told they need to work from home, so they can't physically actually come into their office and see their colleagues and interact with others. That's compounded by the fact that the schools are closed. So a lot of parents have their kids at home. They have to look after their kids during the day. We're hearing from some parents. And then they start their work in the evening when the kids go to bed. So some parents are up to 2 in the morning. So yeah, they're doing double shifts. For others, they're able to work remotely from home. Thankfully, with technology, we're all still connected. So there is that ability that you can still get a lot of your tasks and your work done, though you're not physically in the office. But of course, it creates all these challenges that you don't have others to rely on physically beside you, or get up and have a chat with someone at the desk about maybe some little problem you're experiencing. And also there's that sense of isolation that, you know, we're stuck at home. We don't have that interaction with other people. So yeah, it's creating a lot of challenges.
Wow. And so from a training perspective, obviously training can happen online. I mean, I do that myself. I can do online training with organizations and with people. I can have people in a Zoom room, and I can be, we can have discussions and online meetings and things like that. But team building is, it seems to me to be traditionally a come together in the same place and do something together to forge those relationships. How do you guys do that in this online world?
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's a different dynamic because a lot of our work is people coming in to different parts in the region, all possibly meeting for the first time. So they've all been working remotely with each other. They've spoken to them on the phone. They've been sending emails. They're doing Zoom calls like this, but they've never actually physically stood in front of the person, had a chance to meet them. And that's where team building really comes into play, because it gives a chance for people to do something they're not too familiar with, puts everybody on the same level, and they get a real chance to interact. So that's a real challenge, that people can't get into the room and work together. However, we have, over the last number of years, had a lot of clients where maybe there were travel restrictions or there wasn't budget for travel. So we started looking at different activities that could be run with the remote team in mind. Fortunately, is with digital and with technology, we're still connected in various ways. So there are products that we have that are specifically designed as remote team building. And then we looked at our existing portfolio of what activities work well, and with a little bit of creative thinking, what could we do to make them at-home products so people can participate together in their own home, but feel that they're part of that wider context of the team.
And so now, just to put it into context, I have been at a number of events. I was speaking at a number of events where Teambuilding Asia were the team building component of that event, and these were large conferences. In fact, for some reason, I end up at conferences that Teambuilding Asia are at all over the world. So I was at a conference in Birmingham in the UK where Teambuilding Asia, you guys did. You did this fascinating thing. I think the thing behind you might have something to do with it, but you did this fascinating event where we did something in Birmingham, another group did something in Miami, and another group did something in Australia, and it all sort of came together in this amazing piece, which was pretty cool. And then I did another one in Bali. I think I was at another event in Bali that I was speaking at, and you guys were there. And I think most recently, maybe it was 2 in Bali I was there. And most recently I think there was another one in Australia that I was at that you guys were at. So you're kind of all over the place. So is Team Building Asia part of something bigger? Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We're all connected through this group called Catalyst Global. So there is an organization called Catalyst Global, and they have various licensees around the world. And we have the license for Hong Kong, Macau, and mainland China. And our colleagues at Asia Ability, they're both called David as well. So Dave Fotheringham and Dave Powell, they have the license for Singapore, Malaysia, and beyond. So I believe the conference you were at in Bali was probably run by those guys. So that's a great thing that we have. We have this power of the global network. So if we have a client in Birmingham that wants to do one of the Catalyst global programs, which would be, sounds like you did the big picture, which is this piece behind us here, that we can have, they can have the partners in the UK that have the license to do part of the program, the partners in America, and the partners which would be Be Challenged down in Australia. I can go into that in a little bit more detail, but just to explain how this big picture works, we would take a bespoke piece of work based on your company values, your logo, all the different Pantone colors, and represent that into something that's run through a computer system that's split into different canvases. One's drawn and one's blank. And the teams need to network and work together to share the colors and make sure that all the logos match up. So what they would have done is part of that in Birmingham, part of that in Miami, and part of that in Australia, and it all comes together. So when we moved into the current place that we're in, we call it the Team Building Asia Hub. We walked the talk and got all our facilitators and all our staff and team together, and we did our own bespoke piece of work. So it's got on there, you can see the Bank of China, there's various buildings behind me there from Shanghai, and it's got all our values around the side. And you can see, even though we're the team builders, it looks really good and impressive, but if you look very closely, you can see some of the colors don't quite match up. So that's just saying that no team is perfect. There's always things we can do better. So yeah, we're part of this large global group, which at this time, which is very challenging, it's really helpful that we can talk to other people about what they're doing in their markets. We just had a call yesterday with everybody in the Asia zone. So we had 15 different licensees on that call talking about what they're doing in Tokyo, what the guys are doing in Australia. We spoke to both Davids in Singapore and Malaysia as well about what we can do to embrace this fear that our clients are experiencing and show them that we're here for support, but also here with some programs that when they're ready, they may want to embark on, because what we're finding is some of our clients may not have the systems in place just yet for that perfect remote team working, because technology can do a lot, but there's also stuff that technology has limitations. So we're really just ready. There's been a huge amount of interest here in Hong Kong, and there's been interest from other clients, but they're really just information gathering at this stage to see what they can do once they've got their systems and their health and the care of their own employees ready. And then they're going to be talking in more depth about team building. So it's really amazing being part of this network.
Yeah. So some of the solutions that you can offer for an organization during this time, I mean, there was one where we're wearing Oculus and doing that with little groups. There was another one where we're playing on iPads, sort of running around. That one, I think we're playing on iPads in Birmingham as well, running around doing stuff. And the thing is, you can do this in small groups. You might have several offices in the same country, and you could do that in lots of small groups rather than flying everybody in together. You can do it in small groups and be connecting like this, and even break it up in lots of little chunks too, presumably.
Yeah, you're a great
Can you
champion.
tell me about some of those? Or is it sort of
getting products so well because you've experienced them, which shows that they're memorable. I mean, this is a lot. People will say sometimes, yeah, the team building is great, brings people together, but what next? The fact that you still remember all of this and the interaction shows that there is an impact and you can get return on investment. The virtual reality one that you talked about is an amazing product. It's called the Infinite Loop. We get a lot of requests from clients for digital, for VR. So you always like to be ahead of the curve, ahead of the game. And that product was 2 years in development. When we launched it, basically what it is a teenager is trapped in the virtual world, and your team need to enter the virtual world and unlock a series of rooms by completing tasks and puzzles. to free the teenager. So there's 2 levels that they need to go through. It takes about 90 minutes. The advantage is the person that's in the room, they have to tell everyone what they see, and the people outside of the room, they're the ones that are working hardest and engaged. So they're going through the manual, describing what the task is, finding out what the answer is, and then giving good communication to that person in the virtual world so they can unlock the room. Once that person's unlocked the room, they then hand the virtual reality unit to someone else. So everyone gets a chance to go into the room and out of the room, but the real hard work is when you're not in the VR unit, because you have to communicate most effectively. The great advantage with this, it's done with its own server, and we tested this across all the network. There's 45 licensees currently at Catalyst Global, and the guys in Tunisia where it's based, they had all our different licensees dial in to the server with the VR unit, and we all competed against each other. So if you can imagine,
Wow.
team leaders are very competitive. Although collaboration is a big part of what we do, we're all very competitive, and we want to make Asia look better than Europe or America. So they picked a time zone where they could have everybody, in a sense, log into the server. And Hong Kong, our Shanghai office played as well. We had the guys in Australia playing, and it was the quickest to free the teenager that worked. Now, what that was a good opportunity for us to test that this activity can be run remotely. So if you are working for a big multinational and you've got offices all over different parts of the world, all you need is the VR unit that can either be couriered to you by us, or you get your own unit. We give you the login, and you basically plug it in, you get the manual, and we launch the game, and everybody can be playing from Mumbai to Singapore to Australia, in
Wow.
China. And there's a leaderboard, and people can see, oh, the Mumbai's office ahead of us, we need to work harder to get this, and the Shanghai's coming up behind. So even though, again, they're all dispersed, they're all connected through this activity, they've had a shared experience, they can see where everyone visually on the videos are working, but also where they are in the leaderboard, and you can have a very meaningful debrief. How there's a lot of cultural aspects that come into it, because someone might say, for example, one of the tasks is they have someone doing semaphore. So they've got, the flags going, and it's different animals that they have. And when you work out what the semaphore is, you've got to put the animal into the box, and then that releases the room. Some people
like puzzles and clues and tasks and stuff. Yep.
We're experiencing is somebody whose first language is not English may not know the right word for a penguin. So all of a sudden they think, oh, I don't know what the English word for penguin is. I can see it. But there are creative ways that you can explain what it is. You can act it out. You can run it. So
Yep.
there's a lot of cultural things that can come up, and how it's important to understand that some people communicate in different ways, and that really brings a meaningful discussion as to how you can adjust your communication style, how you can adjust your behavior so that you can have stronger collaboration. And all of that can be done with 5 people in one room across 5 offices, and all of a sudden you've got 25 people all working together that are completely fragmented in different offices.
Fantastic. And so, I mean, I think something like that would be fantastic for now, because communication in this medium, if you're not used to it, if you're used to face-to-face in the office all the time and not really used to video meetings, video online, the etiquette of online stuff, of the online meetings and Zoom calls and Skype calls and all of that sort of stuff, if exploring communication differences and the challenges of explaining things remotely, where we used to be able to get a lot of nonverbal information and a lot of cues and a lot of side talking to be able to get clarity over particular projects and things like that. Whereas now we need the clarity through this medium, and that communication needs to be really strong. So something like that, I think, is something critical to explore during this time. Even if all of a sudden there's a magical cure that comes up in the next, sort of couple of weeks. It's not to say that something like this isn't going to happen again in a couple of years' time. I mean, SARS happened a few years ago, and this experience happened already, certainly in this part of the world. And now this one's, MERS happened. Now this one's happening. It's possibly, it can happen again. So, or something else can happen that disrupts travel or disrupts the ability to get everybody together. So I think that's a really good one, the communication side of it too.
It really is. And it's something that we were doing before the virus hit. So it was something
Yeah.
we were testing. Now, obviously, we can ramp it up and accelerate it because we've had that opportunity to
Yep.
test it. With
Yep.
a lot of these products, once the virus does go, if it's something that we need to live with, they are projects that aren't just specifically because we have a virus. They are because the reality of the world that we live in, we all work remotely. We all work in different offices.
Yeah.
Um, and we've come a long way. The value now of having video when you're talking to people, really, you can pick up, as you said, the subtext, you can pick up some of the body language, and it also makes a greater connection. It might
Yep.
feel uncomfortable at first because people aren't used to it, but the advantage of doing it through a game like the Infinite Loop is it's simply that it's a game and people can
Yep.
just treat it like a game. So even if you make a huge mistake, which rarely people do, um, it's what you've learned from that, but it doesn't really have any impact on your bottom line or business because you've done
True.
it in a game, and people, can relax with that a little bit. It feels uncomfortable talking on the camera because I'm not used to it. It feels uncomfortable because I have to try and pick up what you're saying and I might not always hear, but that's the reality of the world we live in. The more we can experience that in a game, the more comfortable people are going to be able to do this. And we're
And
finding
speaking to
that with our
clients and
clients.
things like that afterwards.
Find that with our clients in Hong Kong, even with our own team, a lot of time when we do our daily huddle, we have to get everyone to dial in. So we set a few ground rules. Guys, you need to be patient. If someone's connection's not good, just wait for them to come through. Even simple things like everyone keeps their mic on because it's disruptive when you ask someone to speak and then they have to go and click their mic on and click it off. Just have an open forum. And again, these are all things that we're learning and the world that we need to adapt in, but it's not specifically because of the virus. It's the reality of the world we live in at the moment.
Yeah. And you mentioned also, and I think the most important part of the whole thing really is the quality of the debrief. And so once they've gone through the game, uh, my personal belief is unless you've got a depth of debrief, it's very easy to just go, well, that was a game, let's move on. But when that debrief happens, that's where all the learnings come from.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, the worst thing is, you do that game and that's it. Everyone goes back to work. That's the only thing that it doesn't become memorable. You need to do a lot of pre-work with your stakeholders, with your clients, and say, what outcomes are you specifically looking for? Because nothing is off the shelf. There are a lot of products that are available, but every time we run them, there's always a slight twist or a slight nuance, which is great. And the great thing about being in the Catalyst network is we're working with the pioneers of all these products. So if one of our clients says, oh, we'd really love to do this, but we want to try it this way where we have different people in this team, or they switch halfway through, or we want there to be a crash in the middle with the technology, because we have that experience within the network, we can go back to the pioneers and say, hey guys, our client wants to do this. And they'll say, well, this and this will work, but this won't work because they've got that depth of experience.
Yeah.
So really important to have the actual people who've created the product in the network as well. But
Yep.
the debrief is really important. It's not just simply, what did you do? How could you do better? It's really about preempting a lot of this through lots of questions with your stakeholders and management. What exactly are you looking for? If it's about communication in different offices, then the
Yep.
facilitator can frame questions around that, but also have the ability to go with the flow.
Mm.
Some people aren't comfortable speaking up and speaking out, but the great thing about this is everybody's had the experience. So no one can deny that they've had this experience. So no matter what you report, it's valid. Someone says, I find this really frustrating because I'm not good at gaming and I find it difficult to go with it. And say, great, that was your initial thinking as you went into this. Having gone through this experience, what is your thoughts on that now? And they might say, well, there's nothing to fear. When I was in the virtual reality room, it wasn't difficult. I had good people around me. And then that can lead into a good discussion around how is good people around you in your day-to-day work helpful. So yeah, you can almost spend as much time debriefing the activity as the actual activity yourself. It could be up to
Yeah.
90. But
Yeah, I think that's where the learning and the training can come from. I mean,
it's
and like you mentioned, it is the new reality of people working a lot more remotely anyway, not just because of viruses. I mean, I did a program with Expedia where the manager called me from Hong Kong. So he was based in Hong Kong. His manager was in London, and his team was in Sydney, South Korea, Japan, Malaysia, and Singapore. And and nobody was in the same office.
Yeah.
It was an absolute virtual team. They happened to all be in Singapore at the same time, so we could actually do a program together. But something like this would have allowed us to do that program online and yeah, and without having to travel about, especially if there are those sorts of restrictions.
Yeah, I mean, we did a program. I mean, this will show you how far back it was. It was for Lehman Brothers, and we did it
Oh
in their
wow!
Hong Kong office, their Tokyo office, and their Singapore office. So basically, we had our facilitator in the Hong Kong office with a live feed, and we couriered down the materials to their offices in Singapore and also in Japan. And the facilitator would do the live feed, and then they would replicate at the other end. And actually, at the debrief, it was really interesting because it was so unique at the time. You could see what you were doing physically in the room, but you could see people miles away doing exactly the same thing. So it was very simple. We couriered down the materials.
Yep.
Everyone had a really good experience, and the feedback and engagement was great. We have another activity called Beat the Box that we ran for JP Morgan, which is basically they've got a series of different boxes that they've got to unlock. And I better not give too much away in case our clients are watching, they're playing the game next week. But ideally, they sort of work together near the end. And we've had our iPads connected with Zoom for team members in Japan to suggest and give advice while they're doing the game. And that's an interesting dynamic because a lot of times people get very excited because of the competitive aspect and the fact that there's a countdown. They go into distress level 1. So a lot of times they're not listening to other people. They're very heads down, focused on what they need to do because they're very focused on that, competitiveness. But because someone's in another office and they're zooming out and they can see it from a different perspective, they actually have some insights that these people aren't seeing. So that really
Clarity
shows
of distance.
the benefit, clarity of the benefits of having from someone outside of your immediate office to give you advice. And that can happen a lot of times when there's a crisis, because what we're finding with this virus is, it's kind of started in China and Hong Kong. It's now making its waves into Europe and America. And we can see a lot of the challenges that we've experienced and made our way through happening now in those countries. And we were on our call through the Asia zones yesterday. We were able to share that experience, which they could then take to Europe and say, well, these guys were aware of what's happening. Make sure you've got the right systems so that you can work remotely. Make sure people can get access through the computer to get in, and make sure that people are comfortable working from home. Test those systems now before it actually hits. Test them when it hits. Test them now. So there's a lot, and this is the reality that we're in. A lot of times when teams are in crisis, they need their other teams in other offices to help them to zoom out and see what the big picture is.
Yeah, there's one other thing I'd like to sort of mention, I guess, is it was an observation that if a lot of these things are getting postponed, there's two challenges that's going to happen when virus condition lifts and now everything's available. One is everybody's going to finally do the stuff that they've been postponing, which means that we're going to end up with a supply and demand problem, which usually then increases price. So what would be a clever thing in my thinking is organizations taking advantage of the online opportunities to get these things done rather than wait for when everyone's clamoring to do the same thing. And I would say that for booking speakers as well as booking team building as well, as an opportunity to start going, how can we do something now when there is a great opportunity to explore this? And I've seen this in lots of different levels. I mean, I've seen this even from the personal level where I'm doing a program with my church where one of the participants is 94 years old, and she's doing the program and she's dialing in on Zoom, and she's like, this is fantastic, and it's a great opportunity now, in a weird way, to get all our elderly folk online because they kind of have to, or else they're going to be isolated. And finally, they can start communicating with their grandchildren, and in her case, great-great-grandchildren, which is pretty amazing. So there's a lot of benefit. There's a lot of, I don't know about benefit, but there's a lot of revelation of positiveness that can come from something like this if we're willing to open our eyes and see what the possibilities are. And I think having a chat with you about some of the stuff that you guys are doing is pretty amazing. One more thing before we shoot off a little bit is, can you reel off just quickly some of the names and maybe the one-liners of some of the programs that you have to sort of spark interest? You were mentioning things on iPads and mountains and other things like that. So what do you have? What's on the
Yeah.
menu?
Well, yeah, just first of all, to your point, I think, someone that's 94 that's dialing in on Zoom, I mean, that's just an awesome opportunity. We never stop learning. So there's someone at 94 still learning. So many benefits from that now. She can open up, talk to her grandchildren or great grandchildren. It's not that difficult. There's a lot of fear. People say, oh, fear of technology, but it's just experiencing it. And then you realize the fear really wasn't that justified. So yeah, just important thing is to keep learning. I think the other thing you said is not waiting till later, the power of now. Here we are. This is the reality. We embrace it. And we have it. I mean, we're having this conversation, and you and I have never physically met. So here we are. This is fantastic. Yep. One of the big programs that we've worked on is called Peak Performance, which is a simulation where teams take paying clients to the summit of Everest and back to base camp without needing rescued. And it's about gaining points. This activity is completely digital. So a lot of times before, the facilitator would need to rely on teams to hand in things like oxygen or tents or their food for the day. Because it's on a digital platform, the day happens on the next day. So each day, it's a 20-day simulation, takes 2 minutes. So if you haven't done your materials for the day, it goes to day 2 regardless or not. Now, in another opportunity, the facilitator will say, team 4, we need your food, we need your tent before we can go to the next day. So this is something that's completely digital. It's not something static trying to be digital. So it has that digital solution so the facilitator can actually focus on facilitating and not have to focus on rallying teams to hand in their information. The fact that it's digital as well means all the scoring can be done at the back end, and you can see some really interesting stats as how many teams summited, but their clients didn't make it back to base camp because they ran out of oxygen. So there's huge amounts of opportunity for content-rich debriefing because you've got all that data at the back end. How it works, teams have an iPad that connects them to the main master screen so they can see where everybody else is moving. Now, in a normal setting, that's done in a room. They've got 10 teams, they've all got an iPad each, and they can see on the master screen through the projector where everybody's moving. What we've now done is shift that to a remote platform where someone can have their own smart tablet at home or their mobile smartphone or even their desktop. They can get a link to the game app interface. We send that to them. They can play the game. They communicate through Zoom. So the facilitator will brief everybody, show them the PowerPoint. The main display screen goes on Zoom, and then those teams go into breakout rooms. So they're in their breakout rooms talking about, right, who's going to move the app, who's going to make sure the weather is the right condition, who's going to make sure we're summiting. And they're doing all this in their continuous breakout rooms, and the facilitator can bounce in and out of those rooms to make sure people are clear. And make sure that they're following everything. And then what you find is everybody going back and forward. What we're finding is we need a little bit more time. 2 minutes is okay when you're in the room and the facilitator can physically go to the team and say, oh, you need to move this to do that. So the first 5 days we do about 2.5 minutes. The next 5 days we do 2 minutes. And then the last 10 days we do 1 minute. So the power of that technology of being able to go into these breakout rooms totally replicates what we do in the training environment anyway. The facilitator's there to brief. People go into smaller teams and the facilitator goes around each breakout room, but people aren't giving away clues or secrets to the other team because they're contained within their own group. The great advantage of that is we can then blend all the breakout rooms to come together and say to teams, okay, it's no longer about team 1 beating team 5. We then have a B1G1 impact, actually. We say for every 2,000 points that the company gets as a collective of all 10 teams, we'll send 1 child to school in Nepal. So we work with Paul Dunn and B1G1 to find impact in Nepal because it's in Everest. So they've got ABC Nepal. And for every 2,000 points, that's 1 child to school. So a team, when they're all competing against each other up to day 10, might get something like 20,000 points collectively, which is 10 children to school. That's great. But when they come together and start to collaborate, we merge all the breakout rooms together, they might set a target of 40,000, which then means they can send, 20 kids to school.
Wow.
So it's fantastic, and people are like, wow, this really happens just by us simply playing this game remotely. We can make an impact elsewhere in the world, and because everyone's connected to the same platform, they can see their team moving back and forward, even though it's just you at home or in your virtual classroom, and you haven't got anyone else around you. You're all of a sudden connected to all these other people, having this experience, having this debrief, and doing something that makes a real corporate social impact at the end of it.
Wow. Hey, for those of you who don't know what B1G1 is, it is a global giving platform that connects businesses with worthy causes around the world. And businesses tend to embed giving with this is the business members of B1G1 tend to embed giving with their business activities. So, for example, sell something and somebody in some other part of the world gets a toilet or a housing or shelter or food or trees planted or something like that. And so what David was saying was when people are hitting the KPIs within the challenge, kids are getting sponsorship to go to school in Nepal itself, which is amazing. That's amazing. So that becomes very tangibly real, and it means in a weird way, the cost of failing means a kid doesn't get to go to school. And so
Yeah,
the
no, it has
stakes
to
are
be
higher.
careful. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, because failure is good in experiential training.
Yeah.
If you fail, you're actually learning something. So failing is not like, we always say, if you make a mistake, I'll give you a perfect example. There's a bit where you have to take clients into a tent before the summit, and your guide then goes up to the summit and back, and then your clients are safely back in base camp. So when I was learning the game, I put all my clients in the tent to get lots of oxygen, and then I, as the guide, went to the tent, went up to the summit, went back down safely to base camp, but I forgot to take my clients out of the tent. So my guy had a great experience. My clients, I got no points for doing that. I only made that mistake once. So I learned from that. So even though the things you go
Yeah.
through, all the motions, you got your checklist, you think you're right, there are things that you will miss. So mistakes are good. It wasn't a failure. Well, it was then, but it wasn't, because I learned from it. So the next time
Sure.
I went, I was like, right, definitely never going to make that mistake again. I actually, exponentiated my score. So
Very
we're
nice.
not going to guilt people into, oh, you set this target at 40,000, you only hit 38. So one child's
No,
not
no,
going
no. Yeah, I know. I guess
to.
it's about making it real.
A lot
Yeah.
of clients actually say, oh, can we match that? Can we top it up? Or we
Yeah.
sit, but in reality, every time, it's like when you set a vision or a score, every time they've set themselves a goal of whatever it is, they always exceed it. So if they say we want to send 20 children to school, they normally hit 25, sometimes even 30. And that's a really interesting dynamic.
It is. I'm about to do a keynote so in a couple of days time, and it's about gamifying your business, and it's
Mm.
looking at how do we add elements of games into the way that we look at particular parts of our business, key result areas and KPIs, and scoring that as well. So that's going to be an interesting one as well. But this is not just gamifying your business. This is the whole game. Everything's the game, which is fantastic. I think we learn by playing games, and we get a lot of insights by playing the game, because we can switch off our business mode and we can get into the way we kind of play life in a way, and then get some amazing insights as to what do I need to do to shift or change the way that I've been operating to be able to get a better result with my team, whether it's remotely or in person.
Absolutely. And that's the great thing. You can observe a lot about yourself, about how you play in the game. People relax a little bit because they play that game, maybe not in the beginning because they're competitive and they want to win,
Sure.
but as they ease into it, gamification has a lot of benefits. I mean, all business is a process, and all
Yep.
processes can be gamified. There's so many ways you can look at elements that we do in business. Even reaching your bonus is a game, because what do I need to do? What targets do I need to hit? The reason
Yep.
that a lot of games are so addictive, for example, Candy Crush, they've done all that research. Why is it so addictive? Why is everybody start playing Candy Crush and can't stop? And it's come down to levels. People like hitting those buttons, getting those badges, getting those rewards. When you put it into a social aspect of what level are you at in the game, you get competitive against others, so you have these leagues. But it's, as long as it's all kept fun and badges and levels, you can gamify any process.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, David, if people want to contact you, what's the best way to contact you? Should they go to the website?
Yeah, sure. So the website is teambuildingasia.com. So just what we have behind us here, just add a .com on that. Or if anyone wants to contact us directly, it's just my name, david.simpson at teambuildingasia.com.
David.simpson at teambuildingasia.com. And if even if they're in different parts of the world, you can put them in touch with the others that would be managing that. Or if we're doing everything remotely, it kind of works that way too.
Absolutely. Just like the big picture that you did in Birmingham, Miami, and Australia. If someone contacts, I mean, we're all working within the same network. You know, it's working wind to the wind power if everyone working together. So
Yeah.
we're more than happy to connect you through the network. In most cases, it happens. We want to do this in one country that we probably have a presence in, and then cascade it to other
Yep.
countries as well.
Fantastic. Well, David, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I think we've got some really amazing ideas about how we can actually continue with team building and training and getting people together and shifting their thinking, even in an environment where we might not be able to get everybody in the room together from all around the region, but we can certainly get smaller clusters together in groups in smaller offices where it's a little bit safer, or people working remotely from home. So thanks a lot. And I look forward to the next game. I haven't done a couple of those ones that you talked about, and I'm pretty excited about it. So looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Thanks, David.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Tim.